The first matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers is finally here in Week 11. This Sunday, the 7-3 Ravens will travel to Pittsburgh to take on their 7-2 division rivals for a 1 o'clock game. There are a lot of unknowns and questions we have to ask of both of these teams as we head into this game. How will both of these top 5 rushing offenses operate with both defenses they're about to face also being top 5 against the run? How will the Ravens' struggling secondary handle Russell Wilson, who's on a 3-game win streak since taking over for Justin Fields? Will Lamar Jackson, who's 1-3 as a starter versus the Steelers in his career, be able to have a convincing win over them with the best set of offensive skill players he's ever had at his disposal? Since Lamar's first full season as a starter in 2019, he has a record of 9-1 against the Bengals, a record of 6-4 against the Browns, and a record of 1-3 against the Steelers. Both of these teams have the potential for deep playoff runs this year, but they first have to decide who wins the division, and that starts with this game. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. And first, let me apologize in advance for my voice. I'm fighting through something right now, so I apologize if I sound a bit off, but I really wanted to get this preview out as I'm looking forward to this game. If you're excited about this year's first matchup between the Ravens and Steelers, hit that like button. If you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe. Also, put your thoughts and final score predictions down in the comments section below. We're going to start this video off by talking about the two offenses. How have they performed so far this season? What has made them effective or potentially predictable? And finally, the players that will need to show up and ball out for each team if they want to get that 8th win on the year. Naturally, for the Ravens, it comes back to Lamar Jackson and his ability to overcome this Steelers defense. Lamar has been uncharacteristically inaccurate and reckless with the ball when facing the Steelers over his career, and that's going to be a key difference in this game for the Ravens, protecting the ball. Despite the fact that Lamar has turned the ball over 10 times in just 4 games against the Steelers with 7 interceptions and 3 fumbles lost, turnovers have not been the Achilles heel for the Ravens this season, and especially not Lamar. Through 10 games, Lamar has only thrown 2 interceptions and lost 4 of his 6 fumbles. Having said that, the Steelers' defense is one of the best in forcing turnovers this season, as they have forced 8 fumbles, recovering 6, and picking off 10 passes. This Steelers team is one that doesn't make a lot of mistakes with the ball in their hands, but forces others to make a lot of them. This will also be a great opportunity for Ravens, who have had limited success against the Steelers, to come out and make a statement in this game. Between Henry, Andrews, Zay, and Bateman, only Henry has scored a touchdown, and only Andrews has played in a game against the Steelers and come out with a win, of which he has 3 out of 9 games. This Steelers defense is legit against the run and the pass, so I'm not expecting breakout performances from everyone here, but with how this offense is clicking with Henry running the ball and the chemistry Lamar is showing with his receivers this year, I am expecting a much better offensive result from this game. But for that to happen, the coaches need to draw up a game plan and be able to react if adjustments are needed, and the players themselves need to execute when their number is called. Moving on to the Steelers' offense. Unsurprisingly, the best way for the Steelers' offense to succeed in this game is to go after the Ravens' obvious weak spot, the pass game. With Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins being the lone bright spots in the cornerback room, and Kyle Hamilton, our only productive safety, potentially missing this game with an ankle injury, the door is wide open for the Steelers' passing attack. With Russell Wilson under center instead of Justin Fields, there's a lot more potential for the Steelers' offense to make the most of the worst pass defense in the league. The obvious heavy hitters on this offense from a passing standpoint are George Pickens, Freiermuth, and recently added wide receiver Mike Williams. Not to mention Jaylen Warren, the Steelers' backup running back, who I think has honestly given us more problems than Najee Harris has. While us Ravens fans know just as well as the coaches and players themselves, this secondary needs to have a bounce-back game this week. While I don't have much concern about the play of Marlon Humphrey or Nate Wiggins, as they have been our best and most consistent corners this season, the rest of the secondary outside Kyle Hamilton is of course a major concern. Not only is George Pickens a problem with his size and speed, as well as his ability to go up for contested catches, the Steelers also have 2 large and fairly reliable tight ends, which is a position group the Ravens have struggled to deal with so far this year. If there was ever a game that we needed Kyle Hamilton to play in and Trenton Simpson to step up for, it would be this one. As far as Roquan Smith, I honestly would rather him simply stay up at the line of scrimmage and keep Pittsburgh's running backs from getting loose because, unfortunately, he has been one of our biggest liabilities in coverage so far this year. When we get down to the most basic points that this defense need to focus on, It's mostly the same old, same old. Stopping the run, putting pressure on Wilson, especially up the middle, and don't let George Pickens beat you over the top like he has several times before. I want whatever safety is out there to simply stay deep, and even if they beat us a few times with underneath routes or in that soft spot in our zone over the middle about 10 to 15 yards deep, it'll be better than getting beat deep. We need to get back to being a bend but don't break defense because these big plays are going to be the death of us later on in the season and especially in the playoffs. The Steelers' defense is almost always good, and this year is no exception. They are second best in points allowed and top 10 in every other defensive category outside of passing yards allowed, where they're 19th. This is also the way that we need to attack them, by spreading them out with our diverse and effective pass catchers and then bludgeoning them with Derrick Henry in the second half. As good as Derrick Henry is, and he should still see at least 8 to 10 carries in the first half, this Steelers defense is great against the run, allowing an average of 87 yards per game on the ground, which is fourth best in the league. I don't know if anyone can cover Zay Flowers on this defense for an entire game by themselves, which is great for the Ravens either way, because if they can't and he gets loose, he can have another big game. Or if they choose to double him most of the time, it will give other guys an opportunity to make plays like Bateman, Andrews, or if he's more involved this week, Deontay Johnson. Overall, this feels like a game where the Ravens offense will have to open up the run with the pass, and if that's the case, our offensive line will have to be ready for some above average pass blocking early. If TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, and Alex Highsmith all play, the Ravens will need to be on their game, as just those three have combined for 14.5 sacks, 20 tackles for loss, and 40 quarterback hits. Not to mention TJ Watt leads the league in forced fumbles with 4, which is another issue that Lamar and these Ravens have had when facing the Steelers' defense. For the Ravens on offense, I have 3 players that will need to show up and perform well to get this win: Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and Derrick Henry. All obvious choices, I know, but with how well Lamar has been shredding defenses with his arms and legs, we will need him against this defense. Zay's ability to create his own shot, if you will, has been instrumental for this Ravens offense, as it takes the pressure off of other pass catchers and gives Lamar and Todd Monken more favorable matchups. Derrick Henry just needs to continue to be the freight train that he has been for most of the year, as not only a closer, wearing down defenses through all 4 quarters, but also getting that outside pitch and catch game working with Lamar, which almost always results in a big play. On the other side, the top 3 threats that the Ravens will have to focus on for the Steelers' offense are Russell Wilson, Najee Harris, and George Pickens. Again, possibly generic and obvious answers, but if we're also honest with ourselves as fans, any quarterback who can throw the ball decently well should be considered a threat to this Ravens defense. And from the 3 games that we've seen so far from Danger Russ, Ravens fans should prepare for another game requiring blood pressure medicine. His accuracy is not up to his usual standard, but he's currently averaging 245 yards per game through the air, has 6 touchdowns to only 1 interception, and an average passer rating of 105.9. Najee isn't lighting the world on fire from a rushing perspective, but he's averaging 71.7 yards per game on the ground and almost 17 yards per game receiving. He did have a below-average game last week when facing the Washington Commanders, only putting up 53 yards on 21 attempts and no receptions, but in the 3 games before that, he cleared 100 yards and found the end zone twice. Pickens is by far their best receiver, and despite some drops earlier this year, he seems to be finding much more productive rhythm with Wilson under center. Over the last 3 games, he's catching 69% of his targets compared with the 58.5% he had in the previous 6 weeks. He's also averaging 92 yards per game in that 3-game span with Russ, and both of his receiving touchdowns on the year as well. The Ravens secondary will of course have to give attention to wide receivers Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, and Mike Williams, as well as the tight ends Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. But Pickens is by far the biggest threat, and the Ravens will have to find a way to contain him, or we might have another Jamar Chase game on our hands. For the Ravens defense, the 3 players we need to have a big game are Nnamdi Madubuike, Marlon Humphrey, and Travis Jones. If we want to limit the damage Wilson and the Steelers' pass catchers can do, we need to get pressure up the middle and collapse the pocket. Madubuike is coming off his best game of the season, recording his first triple sack game of his career against the Bengals. Wilson has always been good at getting out of the pocket and making throws downfield on the move, and so Nnamdi getting pressure up the middle is going to be huge for us. Marlon is not only our best corner, but he's also the Ravens defender who has had the most experience when facing the Steelers defense, playing in 12 games against them since 2017. While I don't think that Humphrey will be on Pickens for the entire game, it is imperative that he plays well when he is covering him, being physical and aggressive to try to disrupt the timing between Pickens and Wilson, and either causing Wilson to go elsewhere or hold the ball long enough for the pass rush to get there. Travis Jones being back in the lineup is huge for the Ravens' ability to stop the run. Including the Buccaneers game that he left early in, as well as the 2 following games that he missed due to injury, the Ravens' defense allowed an average of 109 yards on the ground. In the other 7 games that Jones has played in, the Ravens allow an average of 57.5 yards per game on the ground. The Ravens will need more than just these 3 players to step up, of course, and I'd love for guys like KVN, Roquan Smith, and even Marcus Williams to have good games. But if the Ravens want to win, Madubuike, Humphrey, and Jones have to come with it on Sunday. The top 3 Steelers defenders that the Ravens will need to prepare for are TJ Watt, Dante Jackson, and Deshaun Elliott. Watt is a complete game wrecker, as most Ravens fans are aware of, and so having him as a top 3 threat makes sense. I mentioned some of his stats earlier in the video, but the 3 that concern me the most are his 6.5 sacks, his 16 quarterback hits, and his 4 forced fumbles. The Ravens haven't lost a fumble since the Buccaneers game, but they have put the ball on the ground a few times and gotten lucky since then. Lamar is on pace for a career-low 22 sacks and didn't have one at all last week, but like I said, TJ Watt is a game wrecker, and the Ravens will need to deal with him somehow. Dante Jackson was an offseason addition that the Steelers made that has really paid off, as Jackson has come in and been one of, if not the best corners for the Steelers this season, allowing a 54.5% completion rate, only 309 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and has an average passer rating against him of only 48.4. Former Ravens safety Deshaun Elliott has played on 4 teams over his 6-year career, but seems to have found success with the Steelers this year. He leads the team in total tackles with 64, as well as recording a pick, 4 pass defenses, a forced fumble, and 3 tackles for loss, on top of allowing only 67.7% completion percentage in coverage and a passer rating against him of 82.7. This is going to be a tough matchup for both of these teams, as they each bring a lot of the same strengths as the other, while also bringing enough differences that they can take advantage of each other's weaknesses. If the Ravens can pull out a win, they will not only be the leader in the division, but also be one step closer to securing a playoff berth. This is another AFC North game, so it's going to be close, but with how these defenses are, I don't think we see a Bengals-style shootout, though the Ravens may need it. For the final score prediction, I have the Ravens winning 28-24. Thanks everyone for checking out this week's game preview. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and like I said earlier, comment your thoughts and score predictions down below. As always, guys, stay safe out there and go Ravens.